Hello and welcome to Capital Market Live on Channels Television. I'm Will Ibang. So first, let's check in on the markets. We begin in Europe, where stocks closed higher on Friday, bouncing off a sharp sell-off as market participants assess the impact of Western sanctions against Russia after the Kremlin launched an invasion of Ukraine. All major buses and sectors were in positive territory. The UK's FTSE 100 rose 3.9%. France's CAC 40 closed 3.5% higher, while the German DAX rose 3.67%. Russia on Thursday launched an attack on Ukraine via land, air and sea, prompting fears of a devastating humanitarian crisis and sending shockwaves through financial markets. Now to Asia, where shares mostly rose on Friday as investors assessed the Russia-Ukraine conflict following a massive comeback on Wall Street overnight. Japan's Nikkei 225 was up 1.95% at the close of trading. The Shanghai Composite in mainland China added 0.63% to close, while the Hong Kong Hang Seng Index declined 0.59% on Friday. In the U.S., stocks climbed on Friday to close out a volatile week as investors continue to assess the financial risk stemming from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The Dow Jones Industrial Average added 2.5%. The S&P 500 gained 2.2%, while the Nasdaq Composite rose 1.6%. However, the Dow posted its third straight losing week despite the two-day surge. The S&P 500 and the Nasdaq Composite finished the week 0.8% and 1.1% higher. Back home, positive sentiments returned to the NGX this week as the all-share index rose by 0.4% to close. Notably, investors' interest in Seplat Energy, GTCO, International Breweries, and MTN Nigeria drove the weekly gain. However, activity levels were weaker as trading volumes and value declined by 3.2% and 37% each. Performance across sectors was broadly positive as oil and gas, insurance, and banking indexes posted gains, while the consumer and industrial goods indexes closed negative. Alti Briscoe topped the gainers chart for the week, while Ella Lakes PLC led the decliners. The three of Transnational Corporation of Nigeria, United Capital PLC, and Zenith Bank contributed 29.48% and 27.78% to the total equity turnover, volume, and value for the week. Meanwhile, the NASD OTC Securities Exchange closed the week in negative territory. The index fell 0.55% to close at 730.61 points. Volume of trade for the week surged by more than 300% to 17.77 million units, while value jumped by a similar margin to 179.63 million naira. NASD PLC and Friesland Campina Wamco Nigeria topped the gainers chart for the week, while Air Liquide led the losers. At the same time, NASD PLC and Central Securities Clearing System topped trades by volume to close the week. Now to the fixed income space, where the bond market continued its bullish run this week, with interest seen across all maturities. At the close of trading, the overall average yields closed at 11.31%. The Treasury bills market also continued its bullish trend this week as the market saw more buying interest. At the close of trading, the market was bullish with buying interest seen for both Treasury and OMO bills. Average benchmark yields for Treasury bills fell by 10.5%, while yields on OMO bills fell by 26.0%. Now joining me on the show to talk about the markets is Mr. Oluwaseun Dosunmu, Head Investment Research at Parthian Securities Limited. Good evening and thank you for coming on Capital Markets.
Thank you.
And now, Seun, tell us, you've seen the markets, the run we've had. We had 4 bullish sessions this week, except for one marginal decline pullback that was on Wednesday, I think. So equities, last week we had a negative close, but this week it rebounded and closed in a positive.
Yes.
What do you think are the key drivers moving the market right now?
Okay, so we're actually having interesting times. You know, this is going to be the first February since 2019 that will close in the positive note. And like you said, what are the key drivers? First of all, investors are starting to position ahead because of the earnings seasons that is coming up. And also, we've been having positive news in terms of, you know, some of the macro numbers that have been coming in. Then also, we have the increase in crude oil prices. So we've observed over time that, you know, the NGX ASI is positively correlated to the global crude oil prices. So as such, if we continue to see a spike or the uptrend in global crude oil prices, we'll most likely see our index move in that same pattern. So these factors have been, one way or the other, pushing, the positive activities that we've been seeing in the market. Oh, okay.
So I want to say, so is that the only factor, the oil rally that we saw?
The oil rally.
Is that the main driver for this green close we're seeing in the NGX? Is that the only thing?
So we also have, like I mentioned, we have, the earnings season that is coming up. Now, beforehand, people wait for earnings, for companies to release their results and declare dividends before they take position. Now, people are becoming smarter. They know once we get into the market and the companies release good results, then they actually make profit from capital appreciation and also dividend declaration. So that is also part of what is driving the market.
Now, speaking of the rally in oil and things like that, we've seen the tensions going on, especially with Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah.
And while major equities around the world were being pressured and declining, Nigeria's NGX was in the green. I was quite surprised. I was like, are we in a different planet? What's happening to Nigeria's NGX? Why are we moving in a different direction from the world's NGX? I mean, from the world's equities market.
Okay, so that just basically has to do with foreign participation in our market. So we observed since 2019, we haven't seen fresh funds come into the market. And the market has been driven largely by domestic players. So when, we had this knee-jerk reaction from the geopolitical tensions that happened, Russia, Ukraine, investors were moving from, their different positions to flight to safety. So for the Nigerian market, we didn't have that because the market was largely driven by the domestic players. So while, we could see the negative performance across the global markets, the Nigerian markets were still doing well because, like I said, everybody's looking towards the earnings season. Everybody's expecting that the numbers that would come out will be better than the numbers that came in for 2020. They're also expecting that the dividend that will be declared will be better. And I mean, United Capital and, Nigerian Breweries have set a precedent. So the anticipation is actually,
high.
Yes.
So now, one of the stocks that topped the charts, the gainers chart, is RT Briscoe. That stock has been giving a lot of people reason to question what's happening there. So I'm going to ask you now, like, it rose by like about 53% this week. I think that was 53%, closed 94%, 94 kobo.
Yes.
It opened the week at 60 kobo. What's driving investors' interest, appetite for the stock at the moment?
So basically, bargain hunting activities. I mean, we've been seeing that even across so many other stocks. And it's not surprising to see RT Briscoe do that. We would also not be surprised to see some other stock, give us that kind of return. We've also seen some other stocks that have been doing so well since the start of the year, like United Capital, for instance. I mean, it has been very impressive. We've seen their numbers. We've seen the dividend that they declared better than what they did in 2020. I mean, so we'll definitely see investors make those kind of plays. Yes.
In particular, we want to know what's pushing RT Briscoe. Is there anything? Is there any market direction, any market driver for RT Briscoe? Because the way in which the share price is rising is quite, I wouldn't say alarming, but we want to know what's behind this. Is there anything in particular, or is it just speculations? That's what we just want to say.
For now, at that pace, I would say, yes, some form of speculation. Also, positive expectations.
What in the market should we be expecting for RT Briscoe?
I think we would find out.
Okay, so now recently we've also seen a significant rise in Seplat Energy. The stock price has been rising. And yesterday they announced the acquisition of Mobil Producing Nigeria to buy the major equity stake in that company. What is the impact and implications of this for the company as a whole, and what should investors expect?
I mean, definitely it's going to be positive, even though, yes, whenever a company acquires another, they have that initial teething period whereby they struggle a bit. But I feel like for Seplat, we might see, the stock price continuing its upturn. Why? Because, first of all, global international crude oil prices have been on the upturn. Secondly, Seplat has dual listing. I mean, it's listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the Nigerian Exchange, and also the London Stock Exchange. So you have the dual listing. So investors can buy from here and also sell over there. So, I mean, this is positive for that company. The acquisition also fantastic because by the time, you know, the merger comes into play, by the time we start to see them synergize, yes, then we would start to see that the company would grow. We'll start to see more come from Seplat. Yes.
So you're saying that we'll see increased demand for that stock in the coming weeks?
We should
increase demand. It's not like a temporary thing that will come and then we'll start seeing the stocks plummet or something.
No. That is not part of. We don't think that that would happen because even before now, Seplat has actually been doing well in terms of, you know, the stock price, in terms of their performance. And let's not also forget, crude oil prices have been on the upturn. That is their major, that's the core of their business. So now that we're seeing crude oil prices move on the upturn, definitely the companies in the oil and gas space will actually do well. For Wando, one of the reasons why investors have not been tilting more to Wando is because Wando has not released their financials since 2019. So investors are just, the question that comes to mind is, how is the company performing? Do we know whether they're actually doing well? Should we invest? We've not heard anything in terms of their performance, in terms of, you know, dividend declaration. So you have that, you know, reservation for, yes, but for other stocks in that space, definitely they'll do quite well. So
another component that drove the weekly gain was MTN Nigeria that was mentioned. But I want to say, in my own opinion, I didn't think that the stock rose significantly, or the rise was not as, you know, maybe huge as I expected, especially with the fact that they, you know, they just paid the full payment for the 5G license and also the PSP. What should we expect from MTN? The stock, what should we expect from that stock? It's seeming like it's not in a limbo. I don't know, it's not in a limbo, it's climbing, but it's not climbing. What should we expect from MTN?
MTN is one of the stocks that we like, and that is because they are doing quite well in terms of their performance. We know that data has been driving their income line. Apart from that, last year the CBN gave the provisional approval for the PSB license. Now MTN has been looking forward to this. Now once this comes into play, we'll definitely see MTN, you know, skyrocket. That is the expectation that we have. So right now, I mean, we're not seeing the kind of move that we expect, but it is one stock to actually watch out for.
You're saying it's good. These products or these expectations from MTN is going to be a game changer for, for the company.
Definitely.
Okay, we'll move on to other topics. We'll come back to MTN. Probably we'll come back to MTN because MTN is, you know, we all know why we want to talk about MTN. But indigenous company, the VFD, just was published on the NGX that they just acquired a majority stake in the NGX group. What does that mean for the market? What should we expect? Really, what does that really mean? For them to buy the majority stake in the NGX group, guys, I don't know if that would help impact the market positively, impact investors positively, you know, returns on their, you know, investments. I just want to know.
I mean, the impact right now is little. It won't have that much impact in the market, and that is because, you know, NGX just got listed on the exchange, so investors are going to watch the stock and, you know, make short-term plays until we see their results come in, their Q1 and their subsequent results. Definitely, once investors start to see growth in terms of their revenue, in terms of their core business, then you would see a lot of funds flow into that particular stock. So VFD's purchase, I mean, quite good, I mean, impressive. But going forward, everybody would focus on their financials. And their financials would definitely determine whether or not they pay dividends.
Some companies have begun to release their full-year audited financial results for 2021 in line with the guidelines of the Securities and Exchange Commission. We'll have a look at that and how investors can take advantage of the earnings season. Mr. Oluwaseun Dosunmu is still with us to talk about this. So, Seun, back to you. So this is the earnings season. What should investors, how can investors, what has been the performance of most companies that have released their earnings? How would you assess the performance? so far?
Okay, so the companies that released their full year earnings, I mean, we've seen that the numbers have been impressive in terms of the performance. Then also in terms of, dividend declarations, they've beat investors' expectations. Now, I'll talk about United Capital. The United Capital's performance has been impressive all throughout 2021, from the first quarter down to the full year. And also, their dividend declaration for the full year was at 150 kobo. Fantastic. Like from 77 kobo in 2020 to 150 kobo, investors reacted positively to that. We saw that the price moved from about 11 naira or 12 naira to 14 naira. And just to show you, the kind of reaction, how investors liked that kind of result, and the fact that they declared that kind of dividend. For Vitafoam, investors didn't react as much, and that is because we saw that has been priced in. The stock price has moved from about 8 naira at the start of 2021 to 22 naira towards the end of the year. Like,
so
very impressive.
What would you say is moving? Let's go back to United Capital. What would you say has been the driver for the performance at United Capital? Because the parent company maybe didn't do so well as we expected, but UBA, that's the parent company, right? But United Capital did really well. What would you say is driving that performance for 2021, especially looking at comparing it with the previous, the comparative year, the corresponding year last year in 2020? What would you say drove these gains?
Okay, so they've actually been doing well because of their core business. Okay. They've had more transactions, more in terms of managed funds. It has been more than what it was previously, which is not surprising because, I mean, most of the deals that would happen from UBA would definitely go to United Capital. It has to stay within the group, and we've been seeing more of that. Also, UBA has been expanding when it comes to their Africa network. And the company that will handle that, definitely, in terms of the transactions and whatever deals might come up, is definitely United Capital. So their core business, they've actually been doing well. Okay. Yes, so same thing for Vitafoam, like I mentioned earlier. They've been doing so well in terms of, sales, in terms of the different margins. They've actually been doing so well. Then some of their products too have had, high demand, more demand that we've actually seen in previous years. So basically, their core business has actually been doing well. You know that after the impact of COVID in 2020, a lot of businesses were affected. But now we're seeing that, or after that, we can see that in 2021, businesses have been recovering from that. As such, they've been posting, positive numbers.
And so let's now talk about the stock. Nigerian Breweries. They also posted impressive gains, results for 2021 for the full year audited. How would you assess the performance? What would you say are the major highlights for you in that result? Okay,
so their financial performance are actually good. Their revenue line was actually also good. But one of the things that I would highlight there has to do with the fact that there's a particular transaction that actually pushed the books. That is sale of a major asset. So one of the questions that comes to mind is, that is a one-off transaction. Are we going to see this performance, sustained in 2022? Are we going to see that, happen during the first quarter and the subsequent quarters? Yes, we can see that the revenue line actually went up. Another thing you need to look at has to do with the expense line, because it's just like an individual. If your expenses exceed your income, definitely you would be under a lot of pressure. So going forward is part of the things that we're looking at. And let's not forget that the excise tax on brewers that was increased to 30% is also a major drain on their revenue. So
but their revenue jumped more than, I think, how many percent? It's really huge. Yes, would you say that did not hinder the performance? The tax is like, it's like it didn't happen. No, so that tax, I don't think you should mention it right now, because the move is quite phenomenal. From how much did they declare in 2020 and compared to what they declared?
94 kobo in terms of dividend.
And then one naira 20 kobo in 2021. So that's quite huge for the company.
That is
so if you're saying that you're wondering if this is going to be sustained or if this is just a one-off event, is there anything that's going to that is leading or telling us that maybe this company is going to do well? Are they releasing any new product to the market that would push investors' interest or continue to sustain investors' interest in their products?
Okay, so we've seen that their value brands have actually been driving most of their, what's it called now, their revenue lines and all. But then one of the questions you ask going forward is that are we going to see more demand for this in the subsequent quarters this year? So that is why I made that statement. So I think that is where the focus should be. Yes, fantastic 2021, fantastic dividend declaration. But going forward, are we going to see this go? I mean, are we going to see this play out? And let's not forget that one line, that what's it called now? That transaction that happened, selling part of their assets that actually, pushed up, their bottom line. That is a one-off.
Okay.
So going forward, I mean, we need to
probably expect more or from the company. We'll keep, watching that space and see what happens, especially the investors have got their money in there.
Definitely.
So now, speaking of the earnings season, a lot of people are wondering how they can invest in this earnings season, take advantage of it. So how can investors take advantage of this period to invest strategically and, make good choices? Investment choices, yes. So how would you say?
So for the earnings season, there are two key things that come to mind. And this period, for example, is actually very important because this is the part that, companies actually declare dividend. And you have a lot of investors, domestic investors or retail investors now that focus on this part, dividend. So, you have the objective of capital appreciation, dividends, and also this period can be broken down into four segments. Now, positive performance, dividend declaration. You definitely see investors going, that is what you're actually, those companies that, report positive performance and also declare good dividend, those are the stocks, the companies that you should focus on because that's a win-win. Because in terms of capital appreciation, you would actually make money from that. In terms of dividend declaration, you make money from that.
So is there a form of historical that investors can look at? Because if you say they should watch this stock, maybe they don't have access to this information to see the performance over the years or when they release their results, how can they monitor to know what are the things they need to, like you said they should watch dividend, they should watch.
Oh, yes,
so
definitely.
what other things should they look out for to ensure that they are well positioned to invest in the right companies?
Okay, so obviously if you are in the market, it is expected that you follow companies' releases, earnings releases. That will give you an idea of how they'll perform at the end of the year. So if you monitor the Q1 earnings, Q2 earnings, Q3 earnings, that would already give you an idea. Like, let me talk about United Capital. We can see that we've been seeing growth from the first quarter down to the third quarter. So at that point in time, it was a no-brainer. They've been doing quite well. They've done, even to a large extent, almost what they had done in 2020. They had done that during the third quarter. So at that point in time, it's just easy for you to know that, okay, you know what, this company is probably going to do well. So over time, if retail investors monitor, company financials, if you monitor company financials and also pay attention to, the dividend declarations, it's quite easy for you to anticipate that, you know what, I think this company is going to do well based on their historicals. And, you can always get this information from the NGX website. It's there. It's easy for people to access. I know.
Thank you so much, Mr. Seun. Oluwaseun Dosunmu is the head investments research at Parthian Securities Limited. Thank you so much for coming on Capital Market and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.
And so that's how we wrap up Capital Market for this evening. Do join us next time and stay safe.